Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
All right, let's get this Friday right back on track. It's 7:06. Thank you for joining us on O'Connor and Company. If you're just joining us, we've been rather energetic,
fired up
in our reaction to the most rage-filled, divisive State of the Union, really campaign speech that I can recall in my memory. And Joe Biden last night put the he didn't put a vision forth. He just offered division to our nation. And it deserves a response, and it deserves some fact-checking that we've been doing as well, since we can't count on CNN for that, not when it's President Biden at the podium. We're going to continue in that vein. Also joining us at 7:35, Tim Graham of Media Research Center. We'll talk about how the media is part of the problem. And at 8:05, Katie McFarland will talk about some of the national security implications of what President Biden said last night. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka.
Happy Friday, Larry.
Yes, it is. Yes. And we are joined, by the way, by a gentleman who was there in the room as it happened, Representative Rob Wittman, the 1st Congressional District of Virginia. And I don't know, Congressman Wittman, I've known you for a long time, and you're not really, I think you're more the Speaker Johnson type who will just shake his head in bemused anger at what's going on. But if I were in that room, I might have joined the chorus of hecklers, frankly. Were you compelled to do that as well and shout back at the president?
Well, listen, I was highly frustrated by what was clearly a campaign speech, clearly nothing of substance, clearly, no path forward, clearly looking to place blame elsewhere, not taking responsibility, not creating a vision for this nation, Larry. I mean, this is counter to what this nation needs right now, and that is a clear vision about how we protect the border, how we get this economy back on track, how we make sure that we're protecting our interest against the likes of China and others. I mean, this was all volume and no substance.
Well, speaking of volume and substance, I'm just looking at kind of the time spent on some of the different issues that President Biden spoke about last night. And I think people wanted to hear about, immigration. And frankly, what he spoke about immigration was in response to you and your colleagues really placing a spotlight on the victims of illegal immigration. Talk to us about the mood in the room, particularly when there was that great exchange about Laken Riley.
Yes, he failed to even call out Laken Riley's name, and when he did, he actually called her by the wrong name.
Yeah.
Wouldn't address the basic elements of where his policy has failed, and he says, "Oh no, I can't do those things. Congress has to give me the power to do it." How ridiculous is that, Patrice? He has put in place 94 different orders and directives that have weakened our border policy. He could tomorrow rescind those orders. He could tomorrow use his executive orders, where he has chosen to use it lots of other places to be able to protect the border, to close the border down. Yet he says, "Oh, it's not me. It's Republicans." The Republicans in the House have passed H.R. 2, a bill that will indeed get after this, instead of pointing to the bill from the Senate that he knows has massive problems with it, and says, "Oh, that's the bipartisan bill going forward." I mean, at every term, completely divisive and completely counter to what he knows needs to be done at the border to protect this nation.
I'm sorry, Congressman Wittman. I got to call you out on this. You're a congressman from Virginia, and my intellectual and moral superiors, Jen Psaki, Joy Reid, and Rachel Maddow, say that Virginians have nothing to worry about with regard to border security. I mean, but that moment on MSNBC was indicative of the disconnect here in this country, and I'd love for you to sort of expand on it a bit and explain how the people in the 1st District actually are absolutely feeling the impact of the border crisis.
Well, listen, that comments by those individuals is absolutely condescending and arrogant, and it's completely devoid of any reality or any sense of what people are feeling in this nation. As we see what's happening in our communities, as we see crime rates going up, as we see the impact of large numbers of people coming into these communities, the impact on school systems, the impact on local economies, to somehow say that, it's this underlying feeling that people somehow are misunderstanding what this is all about is just complete, as I said, arrogance on their behalf. And it's not acknowledging what's happening each and every day. And Larry and Patrice, what I hear from folks back home when I talk to them, they're deeply concerned about this. This isn't something that you can just pass off and go, oh, it's just Virginians that are misrepresenting what this is all about. No, this is real. This is happening in every community across the nation, and even Democrat mayors across the nation, even Democrat city councilors are saying, hey, we can't continue to go down this path.
Well, you know what, Congressman, something that we can't continue to go down the path of is our economy, and particularly when we're thinking about how unaffordable things are. Last night, President Biden, patted himself on the back, misleading statistics about job creation, about the economy being on the brink when he took it over, about inflation coming down. Provide a response to that, because I think the American people recognize that what they are feeling every day is not the sunny, beautiful picture that the White House and frankly the mainstream media is spinning about how they're feeling financially.
Exactly. He's trying to tell people, hey, what you're experiencing is not real. I'm going to give you all these numbers. And by the way, the employment numbers, again, not a real reflection of what's going on, because if you use the baseline number during COVID and then say what's happening now, why, of course you can say there are additional jobs. Exactly. But when you talk to people every day and you say, what are you experiencing at the gas pump? They're going, gosh, $3.70 a gallon gas. That hurts them, and it hurts small businesses. And when they go to the grocery store and they're seeing double-digit inflation in things like milk and eggs and baby formula, that's real. That affects their paychecks. When they look at it and go, hey, we used to be able to take our family out to dinner, maybe once a week. Now they can't do that. And we saw the other day even going to Five Guys, $25 to get a meal at Five Guys. I mean, really, he is just so disconnected from reality and what people have to deal with every day, and then trying to tell them, no, you're not really experiencing this. Let me give you all these numbers. It's kind of an Obi-Wan Kenobi moment. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Move along. So.
Congressman Rob Wittman with the Star Wars reference, always appreciated here amongst the nerd center of America at WMAL. Congressman Wittman, you represent the 1st District in Virginia, which is, because of Hampton Roads, is kind of the tip of the spear of the United States Navy when it comes to our defense of the Atlantic coast and the defense of our allies. And given that, and given how much you like to focus on national security and very real threats around the world, I heard hardly anything about the threat from China last night, something I know you care deeply about. And the one thing I did hear about the crisis in the Middle East that has happened under the president's watch, and with money that this president has released to Iran and aid to Hamas. The one thing he said was that he was going to aid the enemy of Israel by adding this temporary port unilaterally without much consultation. Take your pick. You can respond to all of the above if you'd like, but this is not a president who is making the world safer under his watch.
It's not, and he doesn't acknowledge that China is an adversary. They're not a competitor. They are an adversary, and somehow say, well, we want to compete with them. We don't want a conflict. Well, listen, nobody wants a conflict, but you also need to stand up to China, because we know what Xi has said, and he's done everything that he said he's going to do. He told his military to be ready in 2027 to take Taiwan by force. And to not acknowledge that, and to not acknowledge what we need to do to counter China, to deter China, to keep them from that effort that Xi wants to pursue, and that is taking over Taiwan. And by the way, the world will change immeasurably if they take over Taiwan. To talk, too, about building this port facility there in Gaza without any acknowledgement to say, well, by the way, how do we keep any of those supplies from getting into the hands of Hamas? Yes. And then somehow saying, by the way, we're going to build that. There'll be no U.S. boots on the ground. How do you build a facility to the shore, and not have boots on the ground? Exactly. I mean, it just defies logic.
Yeah, it does. And it's a dangerous time for us to have someone in the White House who defies logic. Congressman Rob Wittman, always good to talk to you, sir.
Thank you so much,
for
sir.
joining us. And congratulations on not screaming back at the podium. Honestly, you're a better man than I.
Thank you, Larry Patrice. We appreciate the opportunity.
It's 7:50.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
We do. We play Fashion Police sometimes.
We do.
During
And
our,
I had my notepad out last night. I was watching the fashion.
Yeah, what did you think of the outfits that people were wearing there? You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's a bold red on red choice going
And
there.
I loved it.
You're on
Probably
board with
not for last night, but I get what she was doing. Say her name. Not Breonna Taylor, but Lake and Riley.
Yeah.
So she had that. I thought that was a cute outfit for a Trump rally.
Yeah.
I mean, with this, and they need to make some women Trump sneakers like that gold, low cut, not high tops, but low cut. Those would sell out. I would buy a pair.
And Kamala Harris, she didn't go for the full UPS driver look.
I am not
but
going there.
No? All right, probably
we will
best
leave
not
that
to. Okay.
alone. But all the Democratic women were wearing white. It gets boring. They wear white every time.
The
Like, come on.
suffragettes,
Wear
yeah.
pink for.
What did you think of what George Santos was wearing?
What did I think of George Santos being there?
Thank you. Well, that's sort of the buried lead. What was he? So George Santos, of course, expelled from Congress, but was he there as Matt Gaetz' guest? But he wasn't in the
+1.
But he wasn't up in the.
No, he was in his seat.
Yeah, he was
in his seat.
He was sitting as a member. How does that even happen?
I didn't know that you could do it, but apparently you can. He did it, and he was there, and I believe he announced that he is going to be running to be back in Congress officially again.
That is correct. He is. So he promised that he wouldn't run. He just wanted to play out his term, and then he would go away, and
Run the cycle.
And they expelled him.
Yeah.
And now he's like, okay, I'm now going to be your worst nightmare. So he will be running, and somehow he was sitting next to Matt Gaetz. And
he put on a couple of pounds. I will say
I think that he's been stress eating. I'm not going to lie. I think
Yeah.
this has probably been a stressful time for him, but he has put on a couple. But who among us?
Well, yeah, we all go through those phases.
I don't know if he would wear white on a white sofa on television, though. You know, if you're going to be on television and you're going to be sitting on a white sofa, you don't want to wear a white outfit. That's all I'm saying. And George Santos certainly couldn't carry that off.
He could do a white sweater.
Stop
I
it.
could see that. White sweater and jeans, right? No. You know, nice belt, designer belt or something, and loafers, matching loafers.
Can we get back to what was he doing there? Honestly, how do you just waltz into the House chamber and take a seat that is supposed to go to a member?
Well, right. So, correct me if
The
I'm wrong.
gallery
The seat
is
is
one
empty,
thing.
though, right?
No,
His seat has not been replaced. Is that right?
No, they have
Did they have a
replaced him.
special
Yes,
election?
they've had a
Okay,
special
so
election,
he
and a
just took an
Democrat
empty
won it.
chair?
A Democrat
You're
won
right.
it.
That's right.
I have no, unless he was sitting on someone's lap, which is certainly a possibility in the House of Representatives.
I mean, there looked like there was space. Maybe he was Matt Gaetz +1. I think we are now seeing a new squad
He was
forming.
Matt Gaetz's +1. I don't think that's a thing. I don't think it's like prom. I don't think
Well, his invited guest. I mean,
Well, he put out a fundraising post saying he's going to raise the standard in Congress.
Sorry.
Steve Scalise, the majority whip, was asked about George Santos' announcement that he was going to be seeking election to his House seat that he was just expelled from. Steve Scalise, in his classic understated fashion, said, "I was not aware he was doing that."
You said this is your first time back in the building?
Yes, it's my first time.
Okay, and you came why?
State of the Union. Why not?
Okay.
Privilege.
Have you received any of your colleagues or talked to them?
I was just visiting with some of my colleagues in a very bipartisan fashion.
And what's it like to be back, though?
It's different. It's different. Definitely the people's house. It's always a humbling experience, and it's always great to be back.
You think?
Chad Pegram catching up with George
visiting
Santos.
with you mean running into them in the hallway awkwardly?
Yeah,
that's visiting.
Ayanna Presley.
I didn't mean to photo bomb.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Excuse me.
Excuse me. I do not want to be seen in a picture. She got caught in a picture. I do like that. Why are you back here, George Santos? It's the State of the Union. Why not?
That's like a Hollywood red carpet answer.
Yeah.
It's the Why not?
All right. Before everybody gets exercised about George Santos, how could you do that? He was expelled. Why are you having fun with this? That's outrageous. Let's just remind you that Senator Bob Menendez is still a sitting senator and participating in classified briefings. And here's what Chuck Schumer had to say about that as a reporter challenged him on it.
Another round of indictments. Is it time for him to resign? And if it's not time yet, what will it take?
Look, the bottom line, as I've said, the Senate has certain standards that we must live up to. I am very disappointed that Senator Menendez has not lived up to those standards.
But why are you okay with him serving in your caucus, sitting on committees, attending classified briefings when he's been charged with bribery, conspiracy, obstruction of justice?
As I've said, the Senate has standards. We should all be living up to those standards. I'm deeply disappointed that Senator Menendez has not.
He has not lived up to the standards of the Senate, but I'm not going to do anything about it, even though I could because I'm the majority leader, because I need his vote, because Republicans, whatever, I love my power. And so Bob Menendez will sit on classified briefings. So, what? If
with
George
cash in his jacket.
Gold bars, thank you very much.
Both.
If George Santos wants to come to the State of the Union, God bless him. Go with God, George. I would if I were him, because you know what? Why not? It's 7:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News. Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:36, rolling along here on this Friday morning, trying to finish up your week strong. And even with a smile on your face, despite the fact that our president screamed at us all night last night. It's okay. If you can't smile at that, you have no business calling yourself an American. Coming up later this morning at 8:05, Katie McFarland, I really want to hear what she thinks of this temporary port in Gaza, giving aid and assistance to Hamas terrorists.
Pretty much.
And maybe they should release our hostages before we even have a conversation, let alone build a port. That's coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Patrice Onwuka.
Happy Friday, Larry.
Yeah, we're trying to stay happy. I wish I was as happy and upbeat and positive as analysts on CNN. Here's a take.
The two things that we never like to talk about, high energy and his age. He addressed his age. He came across with high energy. All the Republicans, I have a phone full of Republicans saying that was a campaign speech, but even they admit that he delivered.
He delivered what?
I think she added that on.
Yeah. By the way, I do. Let's bring in Tim Graham here.
Yes.
Tim Graham, Media Research Center, Executive Editor at Newsbusters, the voice of reason here when it comes to media analysis. Tim, good morning. I'm sure you had a late night like we all did.
Oh, yes. But, I mean, I think the reaction from the media was expected, which was give him an A no matter what happened.
Right. But
the speech was more surprising.
That's true. You're right, and I'd love to get that. But Jamie Gangle, in this little clip here, there's a lot revealed. Here, let's break it down.
The speech unfolds on their television sets.
Oops, sorry. Stand by. Here it is.
The two things that we never like to talk about, high energy and his age.
Hold on a minute there. What do you mean you never like to talk? Tim, why would they never like to talk about Joe Biden's age? That's a bit of a reveal, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, this is where the Democrats are always talking to themselves. And in CNN's case, they are having a conversation with their base.
Yeah.
This is their audience.
And so we never like to talk about the fact that the president is obviously too old to do the job, but she's actually telling her base that they don't talk about it because that would upset them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was what they wanted. They were all talking. You had to show vim and vigor. Well, it was more piss and vinegar, but it was. It was something that it was funny because I watch PBS. That's the punishment I take, and they came in saying, this will not be a political speech. Then they had to come out afterwards going, it's a political speech.
Well, even more than that. So it was a political speech. I hear vigor. I don't think that President Biden came across as particularly high energy. He just yelled a lot. But I mean, maybe that's my assessment. Do you think, though, that this is going to, his speech tonight will persuade, I think, the people he needs to persuade if he wants to win, the Nikki Haley voters, the never Trumpers, the people who say they don't want to vote for President Trump, or maybe they could be swayed to vote for Biden. Do you think last night's speech was enough to get to them?
No, and I think that a lot of Nikki Haley voters are people who just miss sort of the regular Republican Party. So many people in the Republican Party just don't like Trump's style, the trolling, the social media rants. They don't disagree with him on policies. You know, everybody wants a better border than we have now. We have an extremely porous border right now, and you can't yell your way out of that. I think, look, I think we might all have a tendency to overemphasize how much people are going to remember this in November.
Tim Graham joins us, and I'm sorry, I'm still sort of stunned by. I'm trying to think of what you could have done to tick off Brett Bozell so much that he makes you watch PBS on nights like this.
Well, I choose it just because nobody else wants to watch it. I have like an extra dose of anger at the notion that we all pay to be dismissed. You know, they came out of the speech last night and they said, you know, the Republicans were remarkably more disciplined than the media wanted. Clearly, Biden had set up this whole speech to provoke them into yelling at him. And when they came out of it, Lisa Desjardins comes out and she says, I think the Republicans weren't listening at all. It bordered on disrespectful.
Some of the things that you highlighted, though, from PBS, I'm looking at your social media feed on X, and I got to say, when I see what PBS is saying about this election and about what matters to them, I do feel like, you remember the John Edwards' Two Americas? There really are two Americas, because to them, the most important issue is that our democracy is at risk. And thank God Biden addressed that last night. And I got to say, you know, and by the way, you may think that our country is at risk, but it's not for the same reasons that Jonathan Capehart believes that it is. And that it really is a disjointed conversation that the consumers of those news outlets get compared to consumers of, you know, I don't want to say mainstream, but more media outlets like ours that I think are more in touch with what really is a deep concern to the American people.
Well, obviously what we notice, and PBS is just as much a part of this as anything else, which is Biden has talking points. And one of their major talking points is, we are democracy. The Republicans are autocracy. I think that's a pile of baloney. I find that insulting, but they all repeat it like it makes sense. And to me, I always go back at them and say, you know who doesn't believe in democracy? You know who doesn't believe in debate? The liberal media. They're the ones that won't allow an actual opposing point of view to be on. You know, their idea of an opposing point of view is Adam Kinzinger saying, yep, Biden was great.
Well, and also, I mean, I'm sorry, but we had a president of the United States last night lecturing the Supreme Court justices and blurring the lines of separation of powers and the respectful role that each equal branch of government is supposed to occupy. That seems kind of autocratic to me. Do they not even see that?
Not to mention the student loan thing, the way he's completely ignored the Congress and the Supreme Court. You know, there's a whole set of Democratic Party authoritarianisms, from student loans to climate. We're going to crack down on all you people. You're not going to be allowed to drive gas-powered cars. We're going to take away your gas stove. You know, and then it's like, you can't misgender people. I mean, there's all kinds of authoritarianism over there.
Just real quick, fact-checking. So I visited some of the major sites this morning. A lot of them, you know, did these soft, really, really softball fact checks on the president's speech. Are you thinking that we're going to see more of this fact-checking, in part because they want to seem unbiased, so they'll fact-check Biden, but they're definitely going to lean into fact-checking President Trump, who's the presumptive nominee on the Republican side?
Thanks for asking. That is a pattern. I found repeatedly, if you go to, for example, to PolitiFact, they fact-check Biden's critics 5 or 6 times more often than they fact-check Joe Biden. This is their pattern. The column I have up today, or I'm putting up today, is AP as a fact, folks, going after Trump because he said Biden's secretly flying migrants into the country. And everything he said was pretty much true. The expert AP used said it was true, and they cried Trump is false. It's not fact-checking. It's just Democratic Party rebuttals.
All right, Tim Graham. Well, thank you for watching The Watchers on behalf of us.
Thank you, Tim.
Media Research Center and Newsbusters. Always doing a great job. Have a good weekend, Tim.
Hey, thanks.
It's 7:45. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes first on the 5s. I'm just still stunned by the fact that at PBS, one of the top issues that voters care most about is the future of our democracy. And that's only because they've heard reporters and hosts say that democracy is at stake, democracy at stake. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't think that January 6th or whatever they believe happened on January 6th is really going to be front and center when people are voting, unless Biden and the media are able to turn the election that way. But when you look at the economy and you look at national security and you look at the border and you look at crime and you look at education,
it is hard to see.
You look at all these other things. What are people think? I can only think that they are in these sort of comforting little places. They're sheltered little bubbles of media elites, Upper West Side or Northwest D.C. or
the Acela corridor on the East Coast, and maybe a couple of bit of places on the West Coast.
But the problem is the crime and the malaise and inflation that's affecting those places too.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think but it is always strange when you go with Tim Graham and look and see what the audience of those outlets are hearing about what's so important.
Well, and interestingly, when you look at the number of minutes President Biden spent on every different topics in his speech last night, the one issue he spent the most time on is that. It's democracy.
Yes,
right. It's not the economy.
Democracy.
It's not the border. He wouldn't have even spent time on the border had it not been for his impromptu exchange.
Well, and it's because he has nothing good to say about it. That's why.
Yeah.
Jimmy Fallon last night on the Tonight Show had, although I don't understand how they could really do reaction to the State of the Union because they taped the show before the State of the Union took place. But I think he had a good observation.
There was a lot of pressure on Biden tonight. His campaign staff was watching his speech the way you watch a toddler learning to walk. It's like, go, go. He's doing it. Good, he's good. Oh, no, he fell. He's not crying. He's okay.
That's funny because it's true, actually. And then Stephen Colbert, the White House is making a big deal out of shrinkflation. It is a problem. They're blaming companies for it. But it is a problem when you spend the same amount of money or even more money for a product, you end up getting less for it, right? But here's Stephen Colbert, who really has his finger on the pulse of the American people.
Then Joe Biden addressed shrinkflation.
In fact, the snack companies think you won't notice if they change the size of the bag and put a hell of a lot fewer, same size bag, put fewer chips in it. No, I'm not joking. It's called shrinkflation.
Joe's right. For instance, Doritos hasn't changed their price, but the bags have gone from 9.76 ounces to 2.5 ounces, which translates to 5 fewer chips. Burn it all down! We will hunt you!
Kind of mocking people.
He is mocking. He's mocking this idea of shrinkflation being what's driving unaffordability today. Sorry, it doesn't work.
You'll remember, though, that the Biden administration and Democrats have somehow recruited Cookie Monster into this discussion.
They went to Sesame Street.
Right, because
Mr. Hooper's store.
Cookie Monster was complaining about shrinkflation with his cookies, which, by the way, right there, remove all funding from PBS. That's an outrage that they're joining this political discussion. But you got to hand it to the Washington Post. Opinion here piece by Catherine Rampell. Headline, please, Democrats, leave Cookie Monster alone. Don't drag Cookie Monster into politics. It's too late.
Yeah, listen, Cookie Monster, stay to eating cookies. This idea of shrinkflation, they're going to try and drag everybody in to make that argument. But you know what? Shrinkflation has nothing to do with mortgage rates that are above 7%. That keeps people from moving or buying first homes.
Patrice, Cookie Monster. Oh, by the way, Joe Biden has now named his brand new border czar Dora the Explorer. It's 7:54.